Welcome everyone to another amazing story on this channel. I hope you are all doing great. If you are here, that means you love learning through stories, and today I have something truly special for you. Every day I bring you fascinating, exciting, and easy to understand English stories to improve your English and expand your knowledge. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss these daily learning experiences. Today's story is about a man who changed history forever, Christopher Columbus. Some people call him a hero, the brave explorer who connected the world. Others call him a villain, responsible for colonization and destruction. But who was he really? By the end of this story, you will have all the answers, and I want you to tell me in the comments, was he a hero or not? Your opinion matters. This is not just a history lesson. This is an adventure, a journey back in time. This story is perfect for your English learning because I will explain everything in a very simple, fun, and interesting way. Even if you are a beginner, you will understand everything. So, are you ready? Let's begin. Christopher Columbus was born in the year 1451 in the city of Genoa, which is in modern-day Italy. But back then, Italy was not a united country like today. It was a collection of city-states, and Genoa was one of the most important ports in Europe. Columbus was born into a family of wool weavers. His father, Domenico Colombo, was a wool merchant, and his mother, Susanna Fontanarossa, was a weaver. They were not rich, but they worked hard to provide for their children. Even as a child, Columbus was different from other kids. While most children in Genoa wanted to work in their family businesses, Columbus dreamed of the sea. He loved watching the ships come and go, carrying spices, silk, and gold from distant lands. He would run to the port every day, listening to sailors' stories about the great unknown world beyond the ocean. But there was one problem. Columbus did not belong to a rich family. Back then, only the wealthy could afford to become sailors or explorers. So how did a wool merchant's son become one of the most famous explorers in history? The answer is simple: curiosity, determination, and never giving up. Even though his family was not rich, Columbus had a sharp mind. He studied cartography, map-making, mathematics, and astronomy. He taught himself Latin because all important books on geography and navigation were written in Latin. At the age of 14, he got his first chance to sail on a ship. It was dangerous because the sea was full of pirates and enemy ships. But Columbus loved every moment of it. The ocean was his true home. For the next 10 years, he traveled across the Mediterranean Sea, learning everything about sailing. He became an expert in navigation and started developing a crazy idea. What if there was a faster way to reach Asia? In the 1400s, trade with Asia was extremely profitable. Spices, silk, and gold from India and China were in high demand. But there was a problem. Getting to Asia was difficult. The land route, Silk Road, was controlled by the Ottoman Empire, making it dangerous and expensive. The sea route was very long, going around Africa. Columbus had a bold idea. What if I sail west across the Atlantic Ocean to reach Asia? The earth is round, so I will eventually reach the other side. It sounded logical, but there was a problem. Nobody believed him. Most people at that time thought the Atlantic Ocean was too vast and full of dangers. Some even believed that beyond the ocean there were monsters, or that a ship would fall off the edge of the world. But Columbus was determined. He needed money and ships to test his idea. For years, He went to different kings and queens, begging for support. He first asked the King of Portugal, but he refused. Then he went to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, but they also said no at first. But Columbus never gave up. He spent 6 years trying to convince Spain. He explained that if his plan worked, Spain would become the richest and most powerful country in the world. On August 3, 1492, Christopher Columbus and his crew set sail from Palos de la Frontera, Spain. The journey ahead was full of mystery, danger, and hope. His fleet had 3 ships: the Niña, small but fast; the Pinta, a strong and speedy ship; the Santa Maria, the largest ship but slow and heavy. Columbus was confident. He believed that in just a few weeks he would reach Asia. But the truth was, he was sailing into the unknown. At first, everything was perfect. The sea was calm, the wind was strong, and the men were excited. They sang songs, told stories, and dreamed about the riches of Asia. But soon, problems began to appear. The wind changed direction, and the ship slowed down. The crew grew restless. Many had never been this far from land. Food and water were limited, and the salty sea air made them thirsty all the time. As days turned into weeks, fear grew in the hearts of the sailors. They started whispering, "What if Columbus is wrong? What if we never find land? What if we sail too far and never return?" Some believed in an old myth that there were sea monsters in the ocean that would swallow ships whole. By September 10th, 1492, more than a month had passed. They had sailed thousands of miles, but there was no land in sight. The sailors started losing hope. Some demanded to turn back. Others whispered about throwing Columbus overboard and taking the ships back to Spain. A few even cried, believing they would die in the endless ocean. Columbus stayed calm. He knew that if he showed fear, the crew would lose all trust in him. So he gave them hope. He told them stories about the great treasures waiting for them. He promised that land was near. He ordered his men to look for signs of land, floating leaves, birds, or different watercolors. Still, the men grew impatient. They wanted proof. Then, on the night of October 11th, something changed. One of the sailors, Rodrigo de Triana, shouted from the Pinta, "Tierra! Tierra! Land! Land!" Everyone rushed to the decks. In the distance, they saw a dark shape. Land! Tears filled their eyes. They laughed, they hugged, and some even knelt down to pray. On the morning of October 12th, 1492, Columbus and his men stepped onto an island in the Bahamas. They were in the New World, but they still thought they were near Asia. The island was beautiful, full of green forests, clear waters, and golden beaches. Columbus saw people, the Taino, the native people of the Caribbean. They had dark skin and black hair. They wore simple clothes made of cotton. They welcomed Columbus and his men with smiles and gifts, offering fruits, parrots, and handmade objects. Columbus believed he had reached islands near India, so he called these people Indians. The Taino people had never seen ships, metal swords, or men dressed in armor. They thought Columbus and his men were gods from the sky. At first, the meeting was peaceful, but things would soon change forever. After staying on the island for some days, Columbus continued his journey. He discovered more islands, including Cuba, which he thought was China, Hispaniola, which today is Haiti and the Dominican Republic. On Hispaniola, he found a golden opportunity, literally. The Taino people wore gold ornaments, and Columbus immediately became obsessed. He believed huge amounts of gold could be found there. But Columbus had a big problem. His largest ship, the Santa Maria, crashed on the coast. Since he couldn't take all his men back to Spain, he left 39 of his men behind to start a settlement called La Navidad, the Christmas settlement. He promised them, "I will return with more ships, more men, and we will build a great colony here." Then he set sail for Spain. The journey back was dangerous. There were storms, huge waves, and the fear of never making it home. But finally, in March 1493, Columbus arrived back in Spain. He was treated like a hero. People cheered his name in the streets. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella welcomed him like a conquering warrior. He showed them gold, exotic fruits, and parrots. He even brought a few Taino people with him to prove that he had found a new world. The Spanish rulers were amazed. They immediately gave him more ships, more men, and more money. Columbus had won their trust. But what nobody knew was that his next voyage would change history forever, and not in a good way. Christopher Columbus's personal life. Christopher Columbus was not just an explorer, he was also a husband, a father, and a man with big dreams. Columbus married Filipa Moniz Perestrelo, a Portuguese noblewoman. They had a son named Diego Columbus. Sadly, Filipa died young, leaving Columbus a widower. Later, Columbus had a second relationship with a Spanish woman named Beatriz Enriquez de Arana. They had a son named Ferdinand Columbus, who later wrote a book about his father's life. After his first voyage, Columbus was a hero in Spain. The king and queen were impressed with his discoveries. He had promised them gold, land, and new territories, and now they wanted more. They gave him more ships, more men, and more power. Columbus was about to make another journey, but this time, things would be very different. In September 1493, Columbus set sail again. But this time, it was not just a few small ships. He had 17 ships, a huge fleet. He had over 1,200 men, including soldiers, priests, and farmers. He brought animals like horses, pigs, and cows to start a new colony. Columbus was not just exploring anymore. Now he was bringing people to settle in the New World. He was building a Spanish empire. After a long journey, they finally reached Hispaniola, where Columbus had left his men at La Navidad, the Christmas settlement. But when they arrived, something was wrong. The settlement was destroyed. There were no Spanish men left, only burned ruins and silence remained. What had happened? Columbus soon learned the shocking truth. His men had treated the Taino people badly. They had stolen food, taken women, and used violence. The Taino had fought back and killed all the Spaniards. This was the first major conflict between Europeans and the indigenous people of the Americas, and it was only the beginning. Columbus was angry and determined. He decided to build a new colony called Isabella and made himself the governor. He forced the Taino people to give gold. He started taking land for Spain. He made the natives work for the Spanish. At first, the Taino tried to be friendly, but soon they realized Columbus and his men were not here just to trade. They wanted to take over everything. Tensions grew. Some Taino fought back. Columbus used force to control them. The Spanish built forts and weapons to stay in power. This was the beginning of European colonization in the Americas. By 1498, Columbus had made 2 voyages. Now it was time for a third. But things were not going well. Back in Spain, people were starting to doubt him. They had expected huge amounts of gold, but they were not getting rich fast enough. Some Spanish settlers in the New World hated Columbus's rule. They said he was too harsh. But Columbus was still determined. He returned to the Caribbean with 6 more ships. This time he found something new. He discovered the South American mainland. He became the first European to see Venezuela, but his problems were getting bigger. In 1500, the Spanish king and queen sent an investigator to check on Columbus. They had heard bad reports. People said Columbus was cruel and unfair. Some Spanish settlers had rebelled against him. Many were angry because they were not getting rich. Columbus had used harsh punishments to control the people. The investigator arrested Columbus and sent him back to Spain in chains. It was a shocking fall for a man who had once been treated like a hero. Even though Columbus had been arrested, he was later forgiven. In 1502, he was allowed to make one final voyage. But this journey was the hardest of all. His ships were damaged in storms. His men were tired and sick. He was stranded in Jamaica for a year, waiting for help. By 1504, Columbus returned to Spain for the last time. By now, Columbus was old, sick, and tired. The world had moved on. Spain was more focused on other explorers. Columbus never got the huge riches he had dreamed of. Christopher Columbus died on May 20th, 1506, in Spain. He was 55 years old. He had made 4 great voyages across the Atlantic Ocean. He had discovered new lands, met new people, and changed history forever. But in his final days, Columbus was not a happy man. He was sick, weak, and forgotten. He never got the title he wanted, Governor of the New World. He never knew he had discovered a new continent. He still believed he had reached Asia. Columbus had once been a great hero in Spain, but in the end, many people saw him as a failure. Even though Columbus was gone, his discoveries changed the world forever. After Columbus's voyages, Spain sent many more explorers to the New World. They found gold, silver, and valuable goods. Spain became one of the richest countries in Europe. Many cities were built, and Spanish culture and language spread across the Americas. Columbus's dream of finding new lands had started a global revolution. A few years after Columbus's death, a German mapmaker named the new continent America, after the explorer Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci had traveled to the new lands and realized they were not Asia, but an entirely different world. Columbus had never known the truth. Columbus's voyages opened the door for European explorers to come to the Americas. But this also brought pain and suffering to many people. The Taino people, who had welcomed Columbus, were forced into slavery. Diseases like smallpox killed millions of indigenous people. European conquerors took land and power. Some people today see Columbus as a villain because his arrival led to the destruction of many indigenous cultures. But others say he was a brave explorer who connected 2 worlds for the first time in history. Even today, people still argue about Columbus's legacy. Some say he was a hero because he proved that ocean voyages were possible, opened the way for global trade and exploration, changed the world with his discoveries. Others say he was a villain because he took land from the native people, treated the Taino people harshly, brought slavery and destruction to the New World. The truth is, history is complicated. Columbus was not a perfect man. He was ambitious, brave, and determined, but also harsh and ruthless. Today, Columbus is remembered in many ways. Columbus Day is celebrated in the USA and some other countries on October 12th. Cities, rivers, and even a country, Colombia, are named after him. Some people protest Columbus Day and call it Indigenous Peoples Day to remember the native people who suffered. No matter how people see him, one thing is clear. Columbus's journey changed history forever. Columbus's story teaches us many important lessons. Dream big and take risks. Columbus had a dream, and he worked for it, even when people laughed at him. Never stop exploring. The world is full of unknown opportunities. Those who dared to explore will find new paths. Power comes with responsibility. Columbus discovered new lands, but his actions hurt many people. History teaches us to use power wisely. Your actions define your legacy. Columbus wanted to be remembered as a great hero, but history sees him in many different ways. What we do in life affects future generations. Now that you've heard the full story of Columbus, what's your opinion? Was he a hero or a villain? Leave your thoughts in the comments.